Hello and welcome to lesson 23 of the Learning Guitar series. In this particular lesson we keep discussing Dorian, we keep discussing minor, and the second degree basically of the major modes. The shape we're discussing this time is the C minor related shape. So when we looked at the major modes, Ionian, C major shape would have been this one, and we used to transpose it, and that's how we got this particular cage. In this case, we're looking at C minor. C minor, when it comes to open chord, is not exactly the easiest to finger, so we're not going to look at, when we study the chords, we're not really going to look at it that way. But basically, like if I do it in the key of F, it will look like this. Okay? It's not very important right now. That's not the point of this lesson. When we do chords in the next lesson, I'll give you a few tips on how you can play this particular shape, but in minor. One thing that we need to consider straight away, make sure you download the PDF so you can follow what I'll be discussing. So the PDF looks like this, and as you could notice, as usual, the first thing that I like to point out is how, in this case, I'm doing it in the key of G as usual. G Dorian and F Ionian are the same thing, so are the same notes. If I look at the scale, this is the scale for F Ionian in this particular shape, and this is G Dorian, because this is G minor. So it's important that you understand that at the end of the day, what we did in lesson 10, which was our F in the shape of A, so we started the scale, and in that PDF there is all the exercises you can do in terms of the intervals contained in this particular shape, all the triadic studies, groupings, extended triads. All those exercises, they're still valid. We're just applying it this time to a minor chord. In other words, so if you study the triads, the same exercises, they still apply to this particular chord. And in a way that's great, because it means that even if we're learning a new sound, in this case minor, we can still use and keep developing all those studies. What we're adding now, compared to when we did lesson 10, is the minor arpeggios that come with this chord, okay? If you've not done the harmony and lesson theory, which was 16, I'll just, briefly show you why am I saying, G minor and F major are kind of the same thing. This is a chart that you found in the lesson 16, and if I look at, so we're studying now for Dorian, we're studying chord number 2, okay? And if I look at where G minor is, you can see that if G minor is number 2, F is number 1, and that's why the notes are the same, and that's why the scale looks exactly the same. Having said that, we can start looking at what's contained in this particular PDF. So the first thing you'll notice are the actual arpeggios, the minor arpeggios. I wrote them in the key of G, since I've done the other, I'm using this as a constant. And here we have the triad, the minor 7, minor 6, other 9, minor 9, 6, 9, 11, and 13. And then you have a second octave. The triad can be played over 2 octaves. Then we will look at the caged arpeggio, so the one that employs all 6 strings. All these arpeggios here, they all start from the root note. Then that's convenient for your photographic memory. Then you have the full triad caged arpeggio, and then 2 octaves versions. So basically 2 triads, 2 stacked triads. Let's start from that. Let me explain you briefly what we're discussing here. So the first arpeggio would be, for example, this. That's root note, flat 3, 5. That's why it's a minor, okay? And it's written in the key of G, but when you're practicing it also, obviously, once you learned what it looks like, you might want to start from, the lowest possible position on the guitar. In this case, I'm starting from C sharp. And I'm saying C sharp because that's my root note. That's why I like to do them from the root note, also because you get to train your ears. So you have here G, this minor 7, so 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, 6, add a 9, 7, 9, 6, 9, 11, and 13. Okay, so these are the, the arpeggios and all the extension for Dorian I can get in this particular cage. So if I kind of recap it with what we did in the previous 2 lessons regarding scales and arpeggios in minor, we had G minor, so shape of E, and say that's minor 7 over 2 octave, or the caged version. Then we add in the shape of D minor, so that's still G minor as a chord, but the shape is a D minor, and we add this. And now we're looking at this, still G minor, and now we have these kind of arpeggios attached to it. Following to that, I also added in the PDF the harmonization of these arpeggios, 3 and 4 note groups. What that means. Besides, it's written here, it's kind of self-explanatory, but, just to spend a few words on that. I can practice these arpeggios as a sequence. Okay, or say if I do the 13 version. But especially the minor 13 version, so the full modal arpeggio. If I spell it with 3 and 4 notes at a time, I get to know all the chords which are contained in that arpeggio. Now, I know this might sound a little bit, confusing as a concept, but actually it's easier than you think. And it's going to be very relevant when we do chord substitutions. Again, let's go back to our G minor. So I have 1, flat 3, 5, and then 7, okay, for example. I can take the first 3 notes and then play the following 3 notes. And then the following 3 notes, which are 5, flat 7, and 9. And then the following 3 notes, which are flat 7, 9, 11. And then the following 3 notes, which are 9, 11, and 13. And they all spell a chord. This is G minor. This is actually, if I look at it from this as a root note, this is B flat major. Right? That's B flat. And if I look at the third one, and I think of it as a root note being here, this is D minor. And if I continue, this is actually F major. And this is A minor. So these are all triads, and if I can spell them in arpeggio, it means that they are also chords. So the same arpeggio, this played in group of 3, like I wrote in the PDF, sounds like this. Now, besides doing it as an exercise, which is cool, we get to know the full extent of the Dorian arpeggio. The idea and the reason I wrote the chords, and in the PDF you'll see them. You see G, B flat, D minor, F, A. This is in group of 3 notes, and this is in group of 4 notes. That's why now you have G minor 7, B flat major 7, etc. Because in a way, just to give you a hint of what I mean by chord substitutions. Let's say I want to play G minor 7, okay? I can play G minor 7 as a G minor, and then add a flat 7 to it. Okay, that's G minor 7. And when we do chords for this particular shape, I can do this. Fair enough. But since I know the second triad, so this triad is B flat, it's literally B flat triad, so this, right? Well, coming from this particular big chord, you will have this. I can also play G minor 7 by playing B flat, and there is a G in the bass. Now that comes very handy, especially if there is a bass player in the band. Okay? So I can achieve the extensions of that G minor using the triads which are contained on the 4 notes. So we say that the third one is D minor. So D minor with the bass of F is spelling basically G minor, and because we have flat 5, flat 7 and 9, I'm going all the way to the 9. So I could say that it's a G minor 9. Okay? And if I continue, this is F major. This is F major, so this. And as you can see, the more I go towards the extension, the more the sound of G minor, actually of G, is kind of disappearing because I'm going farther and farther away from it. But still, I can achieve all. So the last triad will be A minor, so it's be like G with an A minor. That's with the F. That's you know, with D minor. Still G in the bass, with B flat. Okay? I don't want to digress, I just want you to understand that, so that in the future, you know, these are all things that we can use in terms to make our chords more interesting, or if we're looking for substitutions. So, let's keep digging into this. Now we have the full minor caged arpeggio. For those of you who don't know, basically what I mean by that is that's a form of arpeggio that is employing all 6 strings and all the notes available. So it's an arpeggio that in this case is not starting on the root note. This is starting from the root note, say minor 7 for example. But you know, I also have this string, and you know, why not use it? And that's a 5th. So this arpeggio is starting from the 5th, then flat 7, and then root note. Then it becomes what we just studied. Okay, and the same thing we can do with the triad. So in this case, I added the flat 7. I will not this time. So root note, sorry, 5th, root note, 3, 5, root note, 3, 5, and you have this. Okay. We practice the cage version, and then the harmonized version, 3 or 4 notes. And on the PDF, then on the second page, I gave you the usual 3 examples in which, 3 ways that I think there is more, but you should practice the actual arpeggios, these ones, okay? The example here is written as a minor 7, but each of this exercise should be applied to each individual arpeggio. So the first one is, it's a minor 7 in one direction. So I'm starting from C sharp, and it looks like this. So you're practicing basically minor 7 in that particular shape in all keys. Of course, at first you might find it difficult to play it straight chromatically like this. You might want to repeat the same arpeggio multiple times before you move. So, the following exercise is the same thing but reversed. So you have this. And as you move up on the neck, it's important that you actually visualize the neck, look at the neck, and tell yourself what key are you in, because that really is going to help your photographic memory, but also like to memorize the shapes, so that you can after play without looking at the guitar, in other words. And as I said, you want to do the same kind of exercise. Say today you're doing minor 7, maybe tomorrow you do minor 6. Same thing. That's minor 6. Maybe after tomorrow you do minor 9, which is this. And up and down on the guitar. The third version is what I call the alternate version, which is this one, where you're alternating a descending and an ascending arpeggio. In other words, say if you... That's basically what you're doing. I tend to do it chromatically, that's the way it's written on the PDF. So that's E, F, because that's F, F sharp, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, Of course, once again, if you find it difficult to do it chromatically straight away, you can always repeat the same pattern in a particular key before you move. So in other words, say C sharp and back. So you can repeat it as many times as you feel appropriate. So that's now is D minor. That's F, right? Now, following these exercises, you have instead the one applied to the caged arpeggio. Now, of course, like these particular exercises really work best when it's over 3 strings or 4 strings, especially like when it's reversed, like when it's just in one direction. Of course, when you're dealing with 6 strings at a time, like in this case, with only basically the exercise is only designed in an alternate fashion, right? You can see. And, you know, the reason is kind of logical. You know, it's illogical. I mean, you can, let's say, if this is my, like to perform it like this, but as you can see, it's like, you know, I just find it, you know, it's maybe it's cute, but I don't find it too useful. I rather, you know, perform it as an alternate. And once again, you might want to start from the lowest possible available fret, let's put it that way. So in this case, again, C sharp. That's D. So this is basically a minor 7. I'm using the cage system, and you can do the same with a triad, obviously. As I've written on the PDF, apply the following 3 exercises to the full minor caged arpeggio and triads caged arpeggios. So I'm referring to these 2, 1 and 2. And there is 3 ways of doing it. Again, group of 3, group of 4. Don't confuse this group of 3 and group of 4 with the harmonized version. This is also played in group of 3 and group of 4 notes, but here I'm spelling the entire minor 13 arpeggio. That's why you have all these chords. In this case, I'm not spelling the minor 13. This is basically the minor 7, or the triad played in group of 3 and group of 4. So, in other words, the group of 3, if this is my minor 7 caged, group of 3 will be. And group of 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The following exercise we look here instead is from scale to arpeggio. Here we are ascending with the scale and descending with the arpeggio and vice versa. Again, in the long run, that's gonna help you in switching from one to the other, you know, when you're playing lead lines. So we know that that's the scale. And all we're doing here is basically coming up with the scale and up, down with the arpeggio. Okay. And straight after that, you have the version which instead goes ascends with an arpeggio and descends with a scale. So again, very useful because, you know, of course, when you play, let's say like we're improvising over, that's a bit of scale, that's a bit of arpeggio, right? Arpeggio, scale, intervals. Those are fourth intervals. Arpeggio. Scale. So this idea of combining the two is, getting used to, especially for your right hand, is I think is very, very useful. To continue, still we're in page 3. In this case, the practice is to go from chord number 1 to chord number 2. Okay? So again, this is written in the key of G minor, so it's F major, but my suggestion is that you keep transposing these things. You keep transposing these things in all possible keys, so that you don't spend too much time visualizing only one particular key, because then you'll become very good at visualizing that one but nothing else. So change it maybe on a daily basis. Of course, start from this key so that it's probably easier, and it's easier also to compare it to what we studied so far, and that's why I'm doing everything in one key. So like, especially in this case, to go from major to minor is going to look kind of easy. But make sure you study everything in all possible keys. The guitar is a transposing instrument, which makes our life slightly, simpler for a certain point of view. Again, why am I saying chord number 1, chord number 2, and so I'm implying that chord number 1 is F major. If you don't know, please have a look at the lesson 16, I believe it was, and this chart will tell you the reason why G minor, so chord number 1 is F major. As we add modes in the future, we're gonna do progression which have other, chords, but we're always gonna refer to this to understand what the key center is. In other words, what chord number 1 is. So in this case, we're going up with the F major arpeggio. So we're looking at the shape of A, and this was done in lesson 10, in case you need to refresh it. And coming back with G minor. Then going up in G minor, coming back of F major. So as you cycle this, you'll have both the ascending and descending versions of both the arpeggio. The F, so basically the progression we're looking at is this, going into this. If I did it with my hand. F, G minor. I could have done it in every possible case, so F, G minor, F, G minor, and now we're in this page. But I'm spelling it as an arpeggio, so you have F, G minor, F. Now the way it's written there, like again, you can decide to practice it full on and then change, because at first might be hard to just switch straight away. The way it's written on the PDF, so basically you have the major, and then you have the, okay, sorry, so major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor, major, okay? Page 4, same thing again. We have the major to minor, but in this case we move from, we are in the same key. So in other words, sorry if I might sound confusing. Now we're done major, as in staying in the same key, chord number 1 to chord number 2. So F to G minor. In this case, instead, what we're discussing is going from G major to G minor. Okay, we're actually changing key. So for G, obviously, so basically we're going from the shape of C major, the key of G obviously, to the shape of C minor. We're playing this. this. It's just that, once again, we're doing it as an arpeggio. So as an arpeggio, I think the lesson for the shape of C major would be lesson 7, I think. Okay? I think I actually written in the PDF. So yes, it's lesson 7. So as you can see here, we're going down as a G major 7, coming back, and then up as a G minor 7. So in other words, and then of course you have the version where upper major, minor, minor major. So there is 2 exercises you can do. So in other words, what you're looking at is major, minor. And this is really going to help you visualize the differences in between major and minor. And then we've done this. So this is major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. The second exercise is simply like going down major, minor, we're almost at the end. You know, probably like the speaking makes it longer than it looks, but we're trying to cover as much ground as possible. So the following exercise is the same, major to minor, minor to major, applied to scale, as important as applied to arpeggio. And following that, there is the connecting shape. So in this exercise, we're connecting the 3 minor Dorian shape we studied so far, E, D, and G. And the exercises are in the key of G, but I suggest once you're familiar, you move chromatically. So in the case of major to minor, so like this is G, again, I'm doing it in G, don't forget, please transpose it, but this is G major, and that's the scale that goes with it. Okay, and now we have G minor, and so Dorian, and that's the scale. So what you're practicing is going from one to the other. So you are major, minor, and you can do it like changing direction like we've done before. So major, and then you switch to minor, minor, major. And again, you can go back and do it from the top. So as in the first gauge was major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. On the last page of the PDF, so page 5, the last thing we're dealing with, so having completed this shape, now we can also see how we can develop 3 octaves of minor triads. And when I compare it to the major one, so you see that, you spot the obvious difference. And I did it 2 ways, where one involves some stretching with the fingers and one doesn't. In the future, we will expand on this concept of playing material diagonally on the neck and exploit this idea of 3 octaves. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So here is the 2 exercises. So from G minor to G major, 3 octaves, and in 2 different ways. Let me show you practically what I mean. So if I take a major triad like this, so now I have 3 octaves of it, right? And if I lower the third, so from 1-3-5, I go to 1-flat-3-5. So I go to this from, that's why I said we use some stretched position, okay? So now you have major, minor. The other example is where major instead is stretched, so you have this 1-3-5, and the minor version. So by doing it this way, you see the third move, and as I said again, that really helps your photographic memory. You can still do it major, minor. So if you don't want to do stretch position, obviously, so like you have major, minor, right? The exercises literally go minor, and you know, like. In the future, as I said, we're gonna see how we can exploit this diagonal playing on the guitar, and not just for triads, but in general, even for fragments or scales. So the idea of exploiting the fact that we can also play 3 octaves of material on the guitar, not necessarily always just 1 and 2. Last but not least, I prepared another backing track that you can use to practice for, you know, the one for free. Of course, it's a G minor. It's based on G minor. Of course, like there's going to be a version in all keys for the advanced supporter on Patreon. In fact, I take the chance to, you know, remind you, if you find these lessons useful and you want to help me support this entire project, that you can do so on Patreon. If you can, obviously, like, you know, given the time we're living, if you cannot, you know, I'm more than happy, you know, as you know, all the PDFs are free, and, you know. So why the backing track? Because for those that missed the first lesson on Dorian, sometimes you might wonder if the notes of G Dorian are the same as the notes of F Ionian. What is the point of studying modes, right? Beside the arpeggios, of course, the arpeggios are different. So, like, you know, you're playing G minor, you want to highlight notes from that arpeggio in your solos. But in general, you know, that's a kind of a common thing that I hear, you know, people wondering what's the point. And as we discussed, the main point is that not all songs resolve into a major. So, not, you know, if we are in the key of F and the song goes, I don't know, G minor, A minor. As you can feel how it's resolving there. That's, you know, that would be the last chord of the song. Okay. And we discussed the concept of tension resolution and all that. But there are tunes, there are progressions that don't resolve into major, resolve into minor. And we looked at the example of, say, 2-5, where we had the G minor. See, it would be C7. And that resolves in G. And when things resolve, like in this case, I'm using progressions that deliberately resolve into chord number 2, so that we can exercise our Dorian, right? And that's the entire purpose, because, of course, like, you know, the way we hear it is going to be in minor rather than major. Of course, the notes are still the same. So, like, there is a backing track with, you know, 2-5, for example. And this is F major, obviously. The notes are the same. This is also G Dorian, but that's how it resolves, and it resolves in G. Those are notes of the arpeggio. Okay? As opposed to notes of the arpeggios of F, which might be cool for certain genre, okay? But, you know, especially if you're into jazz or Latin jazz or, you know, fusion. But, as you know, hopefully you understand this idea that not everything resolves in major, so we might find more comfortable to approach a progression in Dorian as opposed to Ionian. The progression that I chose for this particular week is 2-4-5. And then the key, if I think of it in terms of G minor as chord number 2, chord number 4 is B flat, and chord number 5 is C7. If you still don't understand or don't know why is that, you can once again have a look at the chart I uploaded to the lessons for lesson 16. And in fact, if you look at chord number 2 as G minor, chord number 4 will be B flat, chord number 5 is C7. In a second, I'm going to set up the backing track and I'll play along, so to show you how you can use it. Personally, I use it twofold. I can use it to literally practice this lesson, or like the previous one in Dorian, any of them. So I can basically run all my exercises on top of them, and I'll show you how it sounds. Of course it sounds like an exercise, but it still has a certain degree of musicality. So I can apply all my arpeggios that I just studied to that backing track, like all the ones which are Dorian based. Triads, intervals, anything really. And then of course you can use it to just improvise, or like, if you want to write something for it, okay? So like when it comes to Dorian, we have a backing track. The first one I think was a static chord, just G minor. And the second one was a 2-5 progression, so G minor, C7. And now we have a 2-4-5, so he adds also like a B flat to it, but they are all resolving in G minor. So after this, I will, I will play along just to give you an idea. In the meanwhile, I thank you. We got to lesson 23. By now, I have a few people who supporting this project on Patreon, and I want to thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the lesson. And if you have any question, just feel free to add it to the question or suggestions. Obviously, feel free to add it to the comments. And well, I wish you a good practice, and I wish you nice playing.